Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 4 finale of Only Murders in the Building. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we had that opening, which I love the little details. That opening monologue where it's like it takes one person. No, it takes like 100 people working on coming together to make one movie. That whole dialogue from Sads at the beginning of the episode is actually part of like her author notes in the script. I was like, oh, that's a little nice little detail, because like when Charles is flipping through it, you can see it really quickly. Like it's on screen for like 2 seconds, but if you pause and read it, you realize it's that whole thing. I was like, oh, that's like a neat little detail, knowing that that's where that comes from. But either way, it turns out Sad started writing this script around the time she was working with Charles on the Brazos reboot. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And obviously for her, it's like, right, she enjoyed her job playing her role in this machine, being one of the many people that kind of brings stuff to life. But then it's like, yeah, she wanted something more. She started thinking about being a writer, and then she's like, oh, I need a hero. And she saw Charles, and that sparked that inside of her to write the story. And then you had that sad line, which is the end of that whole monologue, which is like, happy endings are only for the movies and massages or something like that type of situation. Something of that ilk. But yeah, Charles and Oliver are like, oh, where's Mabel? We need kind of our young person. They kind of, it's like, well, I texted her, and it's like, wait, how'd you get the accents? He's like, oh, I do this and this. Yeah, Mabel taught me. I was like, that's actually really, I was like, good on you, Charles. I'm 32, and it took me too long to learn how to do that. But it's like, hey, that puts you way steps ahead about me. I'm not the most technologically savvy person. I feel like I should be at a younger age, but you get the point. I thought that was like a neat little detail. But Marshall is holding Mabel at gunpoint. Well, at the time, he had the gun on him, but he didn't have it pointed at her, and text Charles and Oliver that it's like, hey, if you don't, what was it? All right, like if you come over here or you call the police, I'm gonna kill Mabel. And he's already killed 2 people already. Anyway, could have been a third with Zach Galifianakis, but it wasn't. Which I love that was the thing. He was like, I wasn't trying to. I'm so apologetic for accidentally shooting Zach Galifianakis. I mean, he's so funny in The Hangover, which I was like, oh, is that the only? Which is kind of like it's obviously like, oh, you're shooting someone, that's effed up. But also, it's like it feels like you're saying the only reason why you feel bad about it is because Zach, out of anything in his career, it's because he was funny in The Hangover. That was enough to make you feel bad. So if he wasn't in The Hangover or whatever, you wouldn't. Like, it's just like, oh, Zach's so funny or whatever. Like, at least Detective Williams is like, oh, I find Zach Galifianakis sexy. You need to protect that man, and she was upset when he got shot. But, for Marshall or Rex, it's more like like he was funny in The Hangover. That's reason enough to be sad about accidentally shooting him. Just thought that was interesting. Also, Charles brought up something which is true to this series, which is, hey, do you notice that every time we solve a murder, like around that same time, another body drops, someone we care about gets stabbed, shot, or poisoned, whatever, and it's like, don't say that. I'm literally getting married. You're saying Loretta's going to die. He's like, no, I'm not. And I was like, part of me is like, you kind of expect it might be Loretta just because it's like, well, it's Meryl Streep, and it's like, will we be able to keep getting Meryl Streep? It's like, well, we can write around that without having to kill her off. It's like, come on, Oliver's got his happiness. Like, we don't want to take that away from him. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I knew it was going to be Lester. The moment they ran into Lester and they just had that conversation and he's trying to talk to them, but they're like, sorry, we got to go. I was like, oh my God, it's Lester. I was like, because he's been this background character the entire series. Because I think Oliver even made a joke of like, I mean, it's like, oh, you, he's like, oh, I got this thing. You want to tell me where to put it? He's like, no, I trust your judgment. But even let me tell you, if you do mess it up, I will destroy you. And it's like, oh, he keeps letting murderers in the building. And it's like, I was like, yeah, it's going to be Lester. And it ended up being Lester. I called it the moment we saw Lester in that scene. I was like, he was at the wedding, but I was like, well, he's at the wedding, but he's not dead yet. I was like, I'm still putting my money on Lester. And lo and behold, it was Lester. funny enough where he ends up landing. We'll get to all that later, but I had to make sure to throw that in there because I was like, I knew it was Lester. I'm not going to be like, oh, I knew Lester was going to be the next victim. It's like, no, just that scene alone made me go, it's going to be Lester. It's got to be someone you knew, you know? Because like Lester he's only been in this season like a handful of like a handful of scenes at all, like the entire season. So either way, tangents and all that, not tangent, it's all relative. But either way, funny enough, they end up running into Loretta, so I guess that was also supposed to play into it, but it's like, they're not going to do that to Oliver. It would be so heartbreaking. And yes, this is a comedy. Yes, it's a drama because it's a murder mystery, but it's also a comedy. It's like, yeah, you know, like they can still do dramatic, heartbreaking like deaths, but I was like, I don't think they're going to do that to Loretta. They're not going to do that to Oliver. But either way, they run into her and she talks about because of an algorithm, which, if you've watched Barry, you know about the gosh darn algorithm. I mean, if you watch YouTube, you know about the algorithm, but the whole thing of like, yeah, because of it, she's going to have to move to New Zealand for her show. And it's like, you know, it's just like kind of like the Hollywood system of an executives following an algorithm, you know, being what kind of dictates what would be more likely to boost the numbers of something. It's like, it sucks, but that is what it is. But either way, it's like, gotta explain all this later, babe. Like, I would move to New Zealand for you. That's fine. Like, I love you. Because initially, Charles, because he figured out, like, how Marshall did it. And I didn't even remember that whole thing about Marshall going into that whole diatribe of, like, whoever had to be extremely, extremely fit. He was gassing himself up in that scene. I was like, oh, man, when you don't think about stuff like that, like, you kind of forget details like that. It's like, right, he was gassing up the person whoever did it. I mean, at the time, you didn't think much of it because you're like, yeah, they had to be extremely fit. And it's like, well, now in retrospect, you're like, that was him, like, gassing himself up, being like, they have to be extremely skillful, extremely strong and fit. But now we know, like, how he was able to do it because Charles is like, right, he's a stuntman. All he had to do was, like, skirt around the edges and make his way over to Charles, but that's how he got here in under like 12 minutes. So it was a solo job. And Charles wouldn't do the same, but then it's like Oliver being like, wait, how about we just do this from Vince's apartment because it's like right next door? And he's like, that's actually the first great idea you've had like all season. He's like, after 4 seasons, I'm cooking with gas, you know? But yeah, they go over to Vince's place, and I love that little line of, hey guys, I'm trying out this new thing. It's called exercise, because he hired Rudy as his personal trainer. And so Oliver was initially going to be the ding-dong, and Charles was going to crawl across, you know? Because for him, it's like, I have to do this. I couldn't save Saz. I have to save Mabel. Which Mabel's buying time because she was able to convince Marshall. It's like, hey, you need to, like, fix this script. I mean, you could kill me, but, I mean, come on. He even recognizes, you're just trying to buy time. And he's like, all right, you're right about the script. Okay, I will help you, get you to help me fix the script, and then I'll kill you. It's like, he's too messed up in the head that he's psychopathic enough to think, like, I need to do this. Because it's like, yeah, only way, like, I need you, because I need to get this from you. Because it's like, right, you know, Oliver and Charles are still around. Like, what are you going to do? Fix the script and then turn it in? Like, it's not, he's so messed up in the head, he thinks it's all going to work out. Because it's like, right, I've killed too many people to go back now. But yeah, he gets sucked in, and now it's like, yeah, I have to let her help me fix the script. And Charles is trying to, you know, do his thing across, but he can't do it. And I thought for a moment, because he's like, Saz, please, Ghost of Saz, come to me. Like, I need your help. Because he feels like he owes it to Saz. Like, she would do this, especially because he's afraid of heights. And so that was always the thing. Like, Saz would tap in, and it's his time to tap in. He's been tapped in, obviously. But then, like, I love the beautiful element of, it's like, right, his best friend's out here with him, Oliver, being like, all right, I'm going to do this. Do not look down. We're going to pivot, and we're going to, like, face the wall, and then we're going to step, step, bend, or whatever. It's like, they're going to meringue over to there, and it works. And I love Oliver being like, and I thought and people would say I have no rhythm, and they kind of do their thing. And Rudy and Vince are acting as a distraction as Oliver and Charles enter the room. I love it. Where it's like, he picks up a thing. I was like, what is that? I was like, Eva Longoria's multi-tool. He's like, it's 19 tools in one, and it can kill you in 4 ways. Shoots the nails. He misses Marshall, but kicks the gun out of his hands. And Oliver picks it up. He's like, sit down, you fake beard bastard. Sit down. And now it's like trying to understand his motive on why he did it. And once again, it's because Saz wrote the script. And he's like, I wanted to be a writer. He's like, I was really good. My dad was a hunter. My dad brought me out there to be a hunter. But I wanted to be a writer. But my dad was like, you're a killer, not a writer. He's like, you guys would watch that if it was produced. And I love the 3 different responses. Where Mabel says, I don't know, it depends on the cast. Oliver says, would I have to go to the theaters? And then Charles is just kind of like, I mean, I haven't even made time to watch The Wire. I love those trio responses, because I'm like, once again, the meta-ness of the show. Obviously, like, there's the whole conversation that does happen from time to time in the movie space of, is there such thing as a movie star? If someone is in a movie, will you watch it at all? That kind of plays in it where Mabel's like, oh, the premise is fine, depends on who's in it. So it has to, that's kind of nowadays of, depending on who's casting the movie and the premise might determine whether someone watches it. But then there's also Oliver's perspective of, would I have to go to the theaters? And a lot of people are like, oh, that's a movie. I'm like, I don't know if I'd go to the theaters for, I'd watch it at home. So there's that. And then also it's just a thing of, man, there's so much stuff I haven't gotten around to from Charles's perspective, like The Wire, which I myself have not seen The Wire. So I'm like, just that conversation in itself encompasses so much. Once again, I love like when you get into the nitty gritty of like someone like the inside things of like, oh, there's such layered jokes to that. Because it's very, like, it's like kind of an intense, it's kind of the antithesis of kind of like the moviegoer perspective nowadays. So I thought that was just kind of like a nice personification of that. And then Marshall made this whole point about how the Hollywood system is broke because he couldn't like make it. And then Oliver being like, oh my God, he's right. I mean, I'm someone, he's like, somehow I've managed to not get an EGOT. So yeah, he's totally right on that. But either way, he kind of tells a story about how he had Saz read his script and Saz had her read his. And when he read it, he was like, oh my God, it was so amazing. But rather than being a friend in that moment or doing anything else, what did he do? He told her it wasn't good enough. And he's like, hey, let me make a copy of this and I'll look through it. And it's like, that's such a, he was so jealous because it's like Saz on her first script was able to do something amazing that it's like he was envious and jealous and he had so many rejected scripts. He just wanted to get an agent, so he sent it out under his pen name of Marshall Pope, but it got picked up by Bev. He's like, I never thought it'd be greenlit and fast-tracked. And some, like, through the stuntman world, eventually it found its way back to Saz. And for her, it's just like, and the layers to it too, where he's like apologetic. He's like, our script. She's like, this isn't our script. This is mine. She's like, I didn't want to sell it yet. She's like, the fact of the matter is, I didn't even get my friend's permission. She's like, I wanted to get Charles' permission before I started selling this script. Because she's like, I haven't even told him yet. It's like, you kind of made a mess of this whole situation. But Marshall's like, come on, it's my dreams come true. She's like, yes, and I had a dream too. Her dream is obviously to open up. What was it she said? Fuck you, never mind. Never you fucking mind, or something like that. When he was asking about her dream about like the trampoline situation, her own stunt school. And it's just like, yeah, you kind of trampled over her dream because she wanted to sell this script and make it into a movie and stuff. And by doing that, she was going to use that money to go towards her school. And it's like, he kind of screwed the pooch on this. And for her, it's like, you were a friend. I was looking out for you. Like, because even he's like, yo, I think Ron Howard overreacted to the whole, situation. But it's like, yeah, he kind of got blackballed. It wasn't even Saz that did that. But it's just like, and Saz was his friend and thought they were friends. And, and he even says, like, Saz was nice to me. And Charles was like, yes, Saz was tight and nice to everybody, She was a good person. And for him, it's just, he just couldn't let Saz tell Charles or anyone the truth because it would ruin everything. He'd be blackballed. It'd ruin any chance he has as a writer. So he ends up taking elements from the story and kind of applying it because he knew about the Dudenoff apartment. He was like, yeah, that's some contrived stuff she had, and stuff that, like, in this script that I immediately took out. But he initially wasn't going to kill Saz. He saw her outside the building, but he didn't take the shot. He's like, right, I'm a writer, not a killer, not a killer. I'm a writer. But he's like, screw it, I'm not. Shot Saz, saw that she was still alive, and scurried over to dispose of the evidence. But the moment he comes in, he's like, I'm sorry, but I can't. I need this. And she's like, he won't let you get away with this. And he's like, who? And she says it. She's like, my number one. I had to fight back the tears. That scene, because also it's like she's dying. And it's like, well, we knew she didn't die immediately because she wrote Tap In. But also, like, that line, my number one, literally almost brought me to tears. I was like, I can't cry. I don't want to cry during this, but I was like, that was so beautiful and so powerful that I was just like, oh, that's so depressing, but also it's so beautiful. And just ever since, he's just been doing everything he can to cover up these crimes and stuff. And it's just like, man, like one person after another. The reason why he killed Glenn is because he didn't want to take the chance that Glenn would eventually remember where he recognized Marshall from. So he ends up getting the gun back. It's like, right, next time, how about we don't how about next time our killer isn't a stuntman? It's like, don't worry, they'd never repeat a killer in the grand story of Only Murders in the Building. But he's about to shoot them, and I was like, he's like, oh, you've made it to the end of the movie. Obviously, mustache twirling villain line. I was like, how's this going to play out? I thought, like, when he got shot, I was like, first and foremost, I was like, wow, this is the first time the killer has died in this show. The killers have always made it to the end to be arrested at the end of every season. I was like, that's interesting. I thought, I was like, oh, is it going to be Detective Williams? And lo and behold, who is it? It's Jan. I was like, holy shit. The first killer killed the fourth killer. That's insane. Didn't see that coming. Also, apparently the reason why no one could find Jan is because she's been in Charles' apartment the entire time. I was like, because we've only seen her in one episode. And I was like, holy shit, she's been hiding out here he's like, wait, you've been in my place for like 3 weeks? She's like, yeah, like in your closet, and then the secret passageway is where I've hidden. So that's where she went. And I guess the whole point is Charles didn't remember, like, Lucy went through those secret passages because that was a story beat in, was it season 2? So I guess he kind of forgot about that and just assumed, like, right, she was in the closet, and obviously Oliver and Mabel thought he was crazy at the time. But yeah, I guess she hid a passage, and when she wasn't hiding in the passage, she was hiding in the closet. Because she's like, yeah, I could see through like little small slits and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, you and me, we got revenge. We worked together and got revenge for Saz. And he's like, well, this is the end. And she's like, no, it's not, Charles. We're in game. He's also bringing up how it's kind of wild how you could say all that stuff about taking a certain knife and like stabbing his eye and kind of swirling it. You can make that all sound so arousing. It's like, but we're in game, Charles. So I'm like, okay, so we're not done with Jan. Jan can always return in some shape or form. So that is fascinating. And even Oliver being like, yeah, you guys kind of make a cute couple. It's like, no, don't do that. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't seem like the best time to celebrate, but we see them on set, and everyone kind of, Eugene, Ava, and Zach body it as their role. So it's like, yeah, it all worked out in, and yeah, our trio of stars did end up helping the case along. And even Charles is more happy about the movie because he felt a certain way about the movie, but he feels even more a better way about it, knowing that Saz wrote it. And he talks to her being like, I wish you were here. She's like, yeah, but that's not how it all works out. But she's like, you did a good job. He's like, I know this is just my brain congratulating me, but he's like, I'll take the compliment. And they kind of tap their hats off to each other. And I was like, that's beautiful. And Mabel and Oliver are watching. It's like, well, it's been a long day, so we'll let him talk to himself. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful element, just having that one last moment and thing between Charles and Saz. So. Also, Mabel got approached by Bev, and Bev was like, hey, do you want to work on that buttons idea, flushed out and stuff? But she's like, no, I want to make a movie about a stunt woman who was incredible and wanted to make a movie, write a script about, a friend that she loved. But Bev's like, yeah, but the algorithm, so that's kind of a no. And so it's like right out of the, it's like, right, Hollywood industry thing just isn't for me. So Mabel backs out of that. So, and obviously it comes down to the wedding, and I thought like, oh, it's so beautiful in the grand scheme of things, where it's just like the wedding's happening and Oliver's kind of nervous, and it's like, Loretta's going to be here any second, and then Uma screams, and she's like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I thought I saw a roach. I was like, Uma, you dick. But there was a part of me in that moment, I was like, you're not going to kill Uma, are you? They already killed Bunny in season 2, so it's like, I don't think they do that. But it's like, because Uma's like the only resident we've seen, like, she has little pop-ins with her little snide remarks, so a part of me was like, oh, I wonder, does that mean we might get more Uma next season? Or maybe not, I don't know. because like obviously she's the only resident we really see the most, you know. But yeah, and then she gets walked down the aisle by her son and Oliver. So much I was like, oh, that's so beautifully poetic, and it's like, yeah, I actually had to because I remember he was Paul Rudd's character's brother last season, but I was like, what was his connection to Loretta? And sitting here, it finally kicked me. I was like, oh, right, he's Loretta's son. She gave him up for adoption at a younger. I was like, right, I forgot about that. So I was like, oh, it's like, yeah, we kind of had to catch up, and they had the wedding, and it's beautiful. And I love Charles doing the whole mwah thing, kissing, sending a flying kiss, and Mabel had to take his drink from me, like, oh, okay, I think you've had enough, Charles, because he was giggling and acting crazy. But yeah, Loretta is fine with going to New Zealand, but she doesn't want to take Oliver away from his family, that being Mabel and Charles. It's like, these are two important people to him, and it's like, it's like our, relationships don't have to be conventional. She'll be in New Zealand, he'll pop in from time to time. That way, you can, if you ever want to bring Meryl Streep back, you can, but it's probably like her schedule is probably full, so that you got her for like, what, a season and a half? Because she was in a decent amount of this season, but probably like a little less than half the season, but it's like, what was she in, like maybe 4 episodes this season in totality? So yeah, she probably has a busy schedule, so it's probably like, probably doesn't want to be tied down to too many projects, so it's probably a thing of, yeah, being able to get her like for this amount of time obviously is an accomplishment in its own right, but I mean, obviously this show pulls big stars and stuff like that regardless. So either way, I just thought that was kind of a neat thing, but I was like, okay, once again, you're not killing her off, you're just kind of pseudo writing her off, but also putting her in a situation where Oliver and her get their happy ending, and also we could always bring her back if need be, like in between while she's working on stuff. I don't think they're going to do the heartbreaking thing of, yeah, next season that doesn't work out, because the thing that I immediately think of is like none of Mabel's relationships have ever worked out. This is actually the first season Mabel's never had like a potential love interest. That's kind of like not worked out every other season. So I think that's so interesting, because like there was her friend in season 1. There was Cara Delevingne in season 2, and Jesse Williams last season. So I don't think I thought about that. I was like, right, she didn't have a love interest this season. Like, I guess the love interest storyline went to went to Oliver this season. Well, went last season, carried over to this season. So that love storyline carried over. So I was like, thought that was interesting. I wonder will they circle back to that or not. Especially because, she's still like the podcasting producer that she is, and I'm curious, like, Mabel, she does have her own apartment in Dudenov, so I'm wondering if she's going to move. I'd assume she's going to be still staying there. Makes me wonder, are we going to see any of the Westies any next season as well? But ultimately, Charles and Mabel end up running into what was the character Sophia, which immediately I was like, holy shit, Téa Leoni. I was like, holy crap. I was like, oh, is she playing herself? Or it's like, no, she's playing a character. Because they brought it up in the recap about that guy Nicky being missing. Because they brought up in the recap, I'm like, oh, does that have something to do with this case? It's like, no, it's set up for next season's case. I was like, interesting. And she did say, like, oh, I tried to go to your apartment, I couldn't find the doorman. I think she said some remark about couldn't find the doorman either. I'm like, Lester's dead. I was like, oh, Téa Leoni, which immediately made me go like, huh. What? I'll try to remember. I was like, is Bad Boys the first movie I ever saw her in? I feel like it might have been. That might be the first movie I ever remember seeing Téa Leoni in. I was also thinking about that other movie. I think I've seen it once. What's it, Fun with Dick and Jane? If I remember correctly, like, isn't she isn't her character married to, she's Jane, and I believe like Dick was Jim Carrey, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be misremembering that movie, but I want to say that was the movie I'm thinking of. Either way, I was just like, oh shit, Téa Leoni, that's so dope. And I love that Charles was like, oh, that's kind of like, oh, she's kind of a dame. He's like, a dame isn't like how Judi Dench is a dame. So I'm so that also made me go like, well, she's looking for a husband, so there's no like, but it almost feels like with her, like, she kind of almost has like that noir femme fatale type of vibe to some extent, which I'm like, is that going to turn into like a love affair next season, her and Charles? I doubt it, but I was curious because, like, right, she's looking for a husband, and they were like, right, we're not a detective agency. We solve murders that are only in this building. So obviously that's going to tie into the ultimate murder that ended up happening, and that being Lester. So set up for next season. He also was found, and this was the point I was going to bring up earlier. He was found in the fountain. He had brought up this whole point of like, was telling the story a little bit, but kind of got cut off, which is going to make them feel even worse. It's like, right, we were so busy trying to save Mabel, we didn't listen to Lester tell us about that fountain. Once again, he's been such a background character, so, and he just was not in this season a lot, but it's just like, right, this recurring character got. So, it's a very interesting setup for the next season. Well, those two mysteries, which are going to be tied together. So, I wonder what we're going to hear about the movie or not. Will we hear about sequels about the movie getting made, or will it be a thing of them finding out actually the movie got canceled and it got gotten rid of because of tax purposes? I feel like that could probably be a joke they make next season. I don't know, depending. They could probably make it like, no, the movie was actually a box office success type of thing. It could also just be that. We have no idea. And there's already been talks about adapting to future seasons. Hell, even Mabel had that line where it's like, oh, they thought solving Tim Kono's murder would be the only one, not realizing like a domino effect of murders where bodies would keep dropping afterwards. So, yeah. Like I said, great way to wrap everything up. I'm so excited to see what next season, where next season ends up taking us. Because at first I was like, because it kind of felt like this was going to be the LA season, but it wasn't really. They were only in LA for one episode, and that was like the first episode. Yeah, they were only in LA for the first episode, but it's like you could say like this season went Hollywood in a way because of the movie production. But other than that, it's like no, like they were only in LA for. So part of me was like, could they end up going to New Zealand? I'm like, nah, I doubt it. But it's like, yeah, they're sticking around. So either way, like I said, I'm still excited to see what the new mystery, how this all unravels next season, and what this Nikki being missing situation, Sophia, with her part to play in this. Like I said, she kind of has that. It feels so old timing, and I don't know how to really. Like I said, that femme fatale noir type of look. She looks like that kind of like she kind of has that noir dame type of vibe. That va va boom. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say in between all this madness. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the next season has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.